He was once broke, mocked, and invisible. The woman he loved laughed at his dreams, compared him to richer men, and eventually left him to marry into wealth. But fate, unpredictable as always, had a plan. Years later, he was no longer the boy she had despised. He had become a mogul, powerful, successful, a man whose name opened doors in boardrooms and whose wealth could buy entire neighborhoods. Then came the day destiny spun its wheel. Driving through the streets of Lagos, his eyes caught a figure by the roadside. A woman, dirty, exhausted, holding a small child and stretching out her hands for coins. His heart skipped. It was her. Ada, the same woman who had once humiliated him, now reduced to begging for survival. What happened next will leave you speechless. This is not just a story about wealth and poverty. It is about love, betrayal, resilience, and the strange ways life balances its scales. So sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because you are about to witness one of the most unforgettable African stories of love lost, tables turned, and destiny fulfilled. And if you're new here on Golden Tales TV, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this story a thumbs up so you never miss a single episode of these life-changing tales. Chike was not born into comfort. His story began in the bustling city of Onitsha, where life moved fast, but opportunities came slow. His family lived in a crowded compound, the kind where 10 families shared one rusted bathroom, and every quarrel, every cry of a newborn, every laugh of a child echoed through thin walls. Privacy was a luxury none could afford. His father, Mr. Okonkwo, had once been a commercial bus driver, but years behind the steering wheel left his back bent and his health fragile. By the time Chike was in secondary school, his father had retired, surviving on a meager pension that barely bought Gary and beans for 2 days. His mother, Mama Chike, was a trader at the Akanja market. She sold tomatoes, onions, and peppers neatly arranged in bowls that looked beautiful in the morning but were half spoiled by evening. Rain and sun battered her small stall, but she never gave up, because feeding her children meant everything to her. Chike was the first son in a family of 4 children. That role came with weight. When his younger siblings cried for food, he felt it in his bones. When school fees were due, he saw the lines on his father's face deepen like fresh cuts. Yet, in the midst of lack, Chike carried a fire inside him, a stubborn belief that life could be different. Every morning, before the sun rose, he would wake to the sounds of Lagos-Ibadan expressway buses blaring their horns and hawkers shouting for attention. With his school uniform neatly washed and ironed by his mother, though faded and patched in many places, Chike would set out, clutching his notebooks that smelled faintly of kerosene from the lantern he used to study at night. School was both an escape and a battlefield. His classmates wore fancy shoes, some even carried the latest phones. Chike wore slippers with thin soles and used a biro until it was nothing but a stump. Yet, when he stepped into the classroom, none of that mattered. He was brilliant, the kind of student teachers pointed to as an example. Mathematics bent easily to his will, economics flowed from his pen like water, and computer science fascinated him. At home, things were different. Often, dinner was just watery okra soup with little or no meat, stretched across the whole family. There were nights they went to bed with empty stomachs, sipping Gary soaked with water and a pinch of sugar when they could afford it. Still, Chike smiled through it. He never wanted his parents to feel the guilt of poverty. Sometimes, his father would pat his back, saying in Igbo, "Nwam, one day the world will know your name. Endure." Chike held on to those words like scripture. When he wasn't in school, he hawked pure water and groundnuts on the streets. Under the blazing sun, he would weave between cars during traffic, dodging insults, horns, and sometimes lashes from impatient drivers. Every coin he made, he handed to his mother, who would kiss his forehead with tired gratitude. Despite the hardship, joy still found its way into their home. On the days his father's pension came, they would buy suya and Fanta, and the family would laugh together, sitting on the cracked cement floor of their tiny room. To Chike, those were priceless memories, proof that wealth was not only measured in naira, but in love. By the time he was in SS3, Chike had only one goal: university. He knew education was the bridge out of poverty. He studied late into the night, the dim yellow flame of their lantern flickering as mosquitoes buzzed around him. His younger siblings often slept beside him, their tiny bodies curled up while he solved past questions and scribbled notes. When the JAM results came out, Chike had passed brilliantly. He had gained admission to the University of Lagos to study business administration. For his family, it was a moment of pride, and a fresh mountain to climb. School fees, accommodation, textbooks, all were far beyond what they could afford. Mama Chike sold 2 of her best wrappers. His father borrowed money from an old friend. Even his siblings sacrificed, agreeing to eat less so Chike could chase his dream. With tears in his eyes, he promised them all, "I will not fail you." Arriving in Lagos was like stepping into another universe. Towering skyscrapers, cars everywhere, students in designer clothes carrying laptops that cost more than his father's pension. Chike stood in the middle of it all with one box of belongings, a heart full of dreams, and clothes his mother had neatly folded with prayers. The journey was only beginning. But Chike knew one thing: he would endure, he would fight, and one day, he would rise. At the University of Lagos, Chike carried his dreams like precious stones in his pocket. He knew they were valuable, but he also knew how easily they could slip away if he wasn't careful. With every lecture, every sleepless night in the library, every assignment completed in dim hostel rooms, he reminded himself of the promise he had made to his family: "I will not fail you." But university life was not just books and exams. It was a stage where friendships were forged, where ambitions clashed, and where love often came disguised as destiny. For Chike, love arrived in the form of Adaobi. Adaobi was beautiful in a way that turned heads effortlessly. Her laughter carried across the campus like music, and her sense of style always made her stand out. To Chike, she was everything he thought he could never have: confident, radiant, from a family that was better off than his. Yet, fate brought them together in the most ordinary of ways: a group project in their second year. At first, Adaobi hardly noticed him. Chike was quiet, focused, more concerned with submitting work on time than impressing anyone. But over time, his dedication, his intelligence, and the quiet strength in his eyes drew her closer. She began to wait for him after lectures, asking questions that went beyond academics. Soon, walks around campus turned into late-night conversations, and late-night conversations turned into promises whispered under the Lagos stars. For Chike, Adaobi became the light that made his struggles bearable. He didn't mind skipping meals to save money for her birthday gift. He didn't mind taking long bus rides just to visit her hostel with a bag of groceries. She was worth every sacrifice. But while Chike gave his all, Adaobi's heart wavered. She loved the way he dreamed, but she grew restless with the reality of his life. His shoes were worn, his clothes simple, and he often couldn't afford the luxuries her friends enjoyed. She compared him. Silently at first, then openly. "Do you know Uche?" she asked one evening as they shared a plate of jollof rice. "He just bought a car. Imagine, in his second year." Chike smiled faintly, though it stung. "Good for him. My own time will come. Just be patient with me." Patience, however, was not Adaobi's strength. The cracks in their love began to show. She complained about the small gifts he bought, about their dates that never extended beyond campus canteens, about the fact that her friends went to fancy restaurants while she ate noodles with him in his cramped room. Chike listened, swallowed the pain, and tried harder. He picked up small jobs tutoring younger students, repairing laptops, even writing projects for lazy classmates, anything to earn a little extra. There were good days too. Days when Adaobi would look at him with genuine warmth, calling him "my genius," promising that one day they would build a life together. On those days, Chike's heart soared, believing love was enough to withstand the storms of poverty. But then came the evening that changed everything. Chike returned from a long day, his hands blistered from carrying crates at a part-time job he had picked up for the weekend. In his bag was a small surprise, suya wrapped carefully in paper, something he knew Adaobi loved. He imagined her smile, the way she would clap her hands softly and call him thoughtful. When he pushed open the door to her hostel room, the sound that greeted him was not laughter but silence. Then, faintly, a male voice, confident, relaxed, too familiar in a space that wasn't his. Chike's heart raced. He stepped inside, and there he was, a man, well-dressed, sitting comfortably as if he owned the room. Adaobi's hair was tied back in the scarf she only wore when she was truly at home. The scene cut deeper than words. The man stood lazily, adjusting his belt with a smirk. "Relax, my guy. We were just talking." His grin was the kind of grin that mocked without speaking. Chike's chest tightened. His voice came out firm but trembling. "Leave." The man shrugged, winked at Adaobi, and strolled past Chike, leaving behind a perfume that felt like an insult. When the door clicked shut, silence roared louder than thunder. Adaobi's eyes darted everywhere but his face. "It's not what you think," she whispered. Chike dropped the suya on the table, his fingers trembling. "Then what is it?" Tears filled her eyes, too quick, too rehearsed. "I needed help. He was just helping me." Chike swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. "Helping you how?" "Adaobi, why didn't you tell me what you needed? I would have found a way." "That's the problem," she snapped, her tears turning to frustration. "You always say you'll find a way, but the way never comes. I can't keep suffering like this, Chike. I need more than promises." Her words sliced through him like knives. He looked at her, the woman he had given his heart to, and saw not the girl who had once laughed at his jokes under the stars, but someone already gone. That night, Chike learned a lesson he would carry for years: love, no matter how deep, cannot survive where respect is lost. The night Adaobi walked out of his life, Chike felt as though the world had collapsed. He lay awake in his tiny hostel room, staring at the ceiling, his chest heavy with questions. Was he not enough? Was love only for the rich? But in the silence, another voice rose inside him. His father's words, "Nwam, endure. One day, the world will know your name." From that moment, Chike made a vow. If Adaobi left him because of poverty, then poverty itself would become his greatest enemy. He would fight it with everything in him. The hustle begins. Chike doubled his efforts. During the day, he attended lectures with unshaken focus. At night, while others partied, he cleaned offices, tutored children, and repaired gadgets. He ate once a day, sometimes surviving on gari soaked in water, just to save money. Slowly, he began to build something small. With the little he saved, he bought a used laptop and started a cyber cafe service in his hostel. Students who couldn't afford internet on their phones came to him to type assignments, print documents, or check results online. It was humble, but it was a seed. When he graduated, while many of his mates scrambled for jobs, Chike dreamed bigger. He expanded his cafe into a small tech service, helping businesses create simple websites, managing their emails, and teaching people how to use computers. He was no longer just chasing survival, he was building a future. The breakthrough. Then came the turning point. A Lagos-based company needed a system to manage their growing customer data. Chike, bold and hungry, pitched himself for the job. He had no office, no staff, only his mind and his old laptop. Yet, he presented with such confidence that the CEO gave him a chance. For weeks, Chike barely slept, pouring his soul into designing a system. When he delivered, the company was blown away. They not only paid him handsomely but also recommended him to others. From one client came 5. From 5 came 20. Before long, Chike registered his company officially. What began as a one-man hustle grew into an IT consultancy with staff, offices, and contracts across Nigeria. His life changed rapidly. He moved from cramped apartments to a furnished flat in Lekki. From patching slippers to wearing polished Italian shoes. From borrowing transport fare to being driven in a sleek car. But wealth did not make him arrogant. Each time he signed a big deal, he remembered the smell of Accra in his mother's stall, the nights of Gary, the shame of being mocked for his poverty. Those memories kept him grounded. The Mogul emerges. Within 10 years, Chike had become one of the most successful young moguls in Lagos. His company expanded into real estate, logistics, and even international trade. Newspapers featured his story, from pure water hawker to tech mogul, the inspiring rise of Chike Okonkwo. He built a mansion for his parents, sent his siblings to the best schools, and funded scholarships for children who, like him, were born in the shadows of poverty. Wherever he went, people whispered his name with respect. And yet, beneath the applause and recognition, he carried scars. Every business award reminded him of nights spent crying into his pillow. Every luxury car reminded him of the woman who once said he would never be enough. But destiny, patient as ever, was not done weaving its story. Because one afternoon, as his convoy slowed at a traffic light in the busy streets of Lagos, Chike's eyes fell on a figure that froze his heart. A woman, barefoot, hair tangled, clothes torn. She held a small child in her arms, her hands stretched out to strangers for coins. Her face was weary, but unmistakable. Adaobi. The Lagos sun was unforgiving that afternoon, pouring its heat on crowded streets filled with honking cars, restless hawkers, and the endless noise of the city. Chike sat in the back seat of his black SUV, the air conditioning humming softly, his mind buried in the pages of a contract he was reviewing. The traffic light ahead turned red, forcing the convoy to a stop. His driver drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, while security personnel in the escort vehicle behind scanned their surroundings with practiced eyes. For Chike, this was routine. Traffic was a nuisance, nothing more. But then, his eyes drifted to the roadside. At first, it was just another figure among the many beggars that filled Lagos intersections. A woman, her wrapper faded, her hair tangled, her feet bare and dusty. She held a small child, maybe 5 or 6, whose tiny hands clutched at her neckline. The woman stretched her arm toward passing cars, her voice hoarse as she pleaded for help. Something about her face caught him. Familiar. Too familiar. Chike leaned forward, squinting. His heart skipped. His throat went dry. The papers in his hand slid onto the car floor. Adaobi, he whispered under his breath. The name tasted bitter, like a ghost summoned from his past. It had been over a decade since he last saw her, but there was no mistaking it. Beneath the grime, the lines of suffering, the hollow cheeks, it was her. The woman who had once been the center of his world. The same Adaobi who had left him, chasing wealth and comfort, dismissing him as nothing. The driver noticed his reaction. "Sir. Is everything all right?" Chike didn't answer. He just stared, frozen. Memories flashed before his eyes, the nights of laughter, the whispered promises, the betrayal that had torn him apart. And now, there she was, broken, defeated, begging on the very streets he once hawked pure water. His chest tightened. Part of him wanted to look away, to shut his eyes and pretend he hadn't seen her. But he couldn't. Destiny had dragged them face to face again. The traffic light blinked green. The driver's hand moved to the gear. Chike's voice cut through the air. "Stop. Pull over." The driver hesitated, glancing in the mirror. "Sir. I said stop." The SUV pulled to the side, tires crunching against gravel. Immediately, his security detail stepped out, puzzled, watching the beggar woman approach cautiously. She held her child closer, fear in her tired eyes as she looked at the polished vehicles and the stern men in black suits. Chike stepped out slowly. His Italian shoes touched the dusty roadside, a contrast so sharp it almost mocked the moment. He adjusted his suit jacket, every movement deliberate, his eyes never leaving hers. Adaobi froze. At first, she didn't recognize him. How could she? The boy she left behind had been poor, hungry, and desperate. This man was tall, confident, draped in wealth, his aura commanding respect. But then his eyes, those eyes she once knew so well, locked with hers. Her lips parted. The child tugged at her wrapper, whispering, "Mama." Tears welled up in Adaobi's eyes. She staggered backward, her voice trembling. "Chike." The sound of her voice, cracked and broken, pierced through him. He inhaled sharply, fighting the storm rising inside. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to shout, to remind her of the day she threw him aside like trash. But standing there, seeing the child in her arms, seeing the weight of suffering etched into her very skin, his anger melted into something else. Pity. Pain. A strange, heavy compassion he didn't expect. Adaobi dropped to her knees, clutching the child, sobbing uncontrollably. "I never thought it would be you." The crowd of passers-by slowed, watching the strange scene unfold. Some whispered. Others simply stared, wondering what tied a wealthy mogul to a homeless beggar. Chike's driver stepped closer, concerned. "Sir, should we?" Chike raised a hand to silence him. His eyes remained on Adaobi. After a long silence, he spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "Life has its way of teaching lessons, Adaobi. Do you remember the day you told me I wasn't enough? The day you said you needed more than promises? Look where we are now." Her tears flowed harder. She lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. "I was foolish, blind. I thought wealth was the answer. I left you for a man who promised the world. But when his wealth vanished, he abandoned me. He left me with this child, and since then, life has punished me." Her words cut like glass, but not because they hurt him, because they revealed the cruel irony of fate. Chike sighed, the weight of years pressing on him. He bent slightly, his eyes softening as they rested on the child's innocent face. "This boy did not choose your mistakes. He deserves better." Adaobi's body shook with sobs. "Forgive me, Chike. I beg you." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, broken only by the noise of Lagos traffic. Then Chike extended his hand. Not in anger, not in mockery, but in a gesture of grace. "Stand up," he said quietly. "Your story is not over yet." The street was still, yet heavy with whispers. Onlookers couldn't believe what they had just seen, a wealthy mogul reaching down to lift a woman many considered forgotten. For Chike, the moment was surreal. Years ago, Adaobi's rejection had nearly broken him. Now, fate had brought her back, not as the radiant girl he once chased, but as a mother clinging to survival. He helped her to her feet. Adaobi's hands trembled as she clutched her child, eyes filled with shame. The man she had abandoned now stood as her only lifeline. Without another word, Chike signaled to his driver. "Take her to the house." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Some expected him to scorn her, to drive away and leave her in the dust of her choices. But Chike knew better. True strength is not in revenge, it is in compassion. At his mansion, Adaobi was given food, clean clothes, and a room to rest with her child. The boy's eyes sparkled with gratitude as he ate for the first time without fear of the plate running empty. Adaobi wept silently, not from hunger this time, but from the weight of grace. Days turned to weeks, and though Chike never rekindled the love they once shared, he ensured Adaobi and her child were taken care of. He found her a small business to manage, a chance to rebuild her life with dignity. She remained humbled, always remembering the sharp lessons of her choices. For Chike, it was never about proving her wrong anymore. His success was not built to spite her, but to honor his parents, uplift his siblings, and inspire those who believed poverty was a life sentence. And so, the circle of destiny closed. What began as heartbreak ended as redemption, not just for Adaobi, but for Chike as well. What this story teaches us. Life has a strange way of balancing its scales. It teaches us that betrayal can be the fire that fuels greatness. That wealth without character crumbles, but character in poverty can rise to wealth. That revenge is not always the answer. Sometimes, forgiveness and compassion heal deeper than punishment ever could. And most importantly, it teaches that no one should be measured only by their present struggles. The poor boy on the street today may be the mogul of tomorrow. Chike's story reminds us, never despise small beginnings, never look down on anyone, and never give up on yourself, because destiny has a way of surprising us all.